Hello and welcome to the GAK.co.uk Guitar Shop podcast. I am your host Mark Packham, who is with me this evening.
Hello, my name's Jay. I'm the assistant manager here in the guitar store.
And I'm Joe, and I'm the manager in the guitar store.
That's not true, is it?
No, and also we did that joke last week. I did that joke last week.
That's true. No, you were the manager.
Wait, no,
last
was it the
week.
week before?
No,
when was Matt last
week?
here?
It was last. Matt hasn't been here for a long time.
Matt's dead, isn't he?
It's so good.
It's
isn't it?
true. Yes, we buried him in a forest.
So, yes, we are one man down this evening. Matthew K. Knightington could not be with us. So I'm stuck with you two guys.
Hello.
Hi.
And this week we're celebrating the birthday of Sir Kurt of Cobain. It's Kurt Cobain's. It would have just been Kurt Cobain's birthday a couple of days before this podcast
How
comes
old?
out. I don't know.
Well, hang on a sec. He was 27 when he died. He died in 94. So
47.
47.
Wow, that's bad. That's depressing, isn't it?
Wow, that's really not that old. I mean, he could almost.
Wait, no,
still
because he
be-
died in April, so 46.
Right.
That's pretty weird. That you know that. I mean,
What do you reckon
that's heavy
Nirvana?
knowledge.
What do you reckon Nirvana would have been doing? Would they? Do you think they would have like slid into kind of like sort of
Mediocrity.
yeah, like
Well, most bands do, don't they? That kind of make it through. I don't know though. 47 still isn't old enough. But then, if you look at like Chris Novoselic, he's gone super weird.
well, he's stopped doing music basically, hasn't he?
Yeah,
And kind of,
but that
but
said,
then-
Dave Grohl's become the sort
Like
of godfather
the sort of,
of rock
the
and
sort
roll.
of poster boy of rock and roll. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, he sort of became the new Kurt Cobain.
he sort
Yeah.
of survived it.
Well, I mean,
What would have happened?
He kind of became
Foo
the
Fighters
new,
have
like, because I guess if that era, Kurt Cobain was kind of, the sort of, obviously you've got the sort of tortured soul persona, but like he was like the face of rock and roll, really.
Yeah.
And I
Oh,
guess
yeah, 100%.
that's kind of what Dave Grohl has become.
Definitely.
Now.
But they're obviously very different characters
Oh, yeah,
in terms
yeah,
of
yeah.
like
I wonder
songwriting
if-
and stuff.
I wonder if Kurt Cobain would have done a similar thing to Dave Grohl. I wonder if he'd have like tonked up and
What, like got clean and
yeah, and got really butch like Dave Grohl did.
did he?
Well, Dave
he's got-
Grohl
he's-
is now butch. Look at Dave Grohl in Nirvana. He was really
Yeah, he's like a
scrawny
little
and goofy.
weedy. But is that not
And
something
now-
about just moving into your
wasn't he
like
wasn't
late
he just, like,
20s?
20.
Well, I suppose so.
Yeah, wasn't he just like?
Yeah. True. But I'm saying, Kurt Cobain, now at the age of 47, would he be really tonk? Would he have a big, thick neck?
What, like
Dave Grohl?
like Doyle from the Misfits? Doyle's big,
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
but
Will
anyway,
a podcast go by where you don't mention Doyle from the Misfits?
I'm so into Doyle. He's wicked. But
Man,
anyway,
Man Crush Mondays.
Man Crush Monday. So yeah. But yeah, I don't know what would happen. But I mean, who else was big in that sort of scene at the time? Soundgarden.
Pearl Jam, Soundgarden.
Still going?
Yeah,
You
I
know?
mean, I honestly think they would.
But it was a very different band, though, wasn't it? They were very, very different.
I don't know. I don't know. Apparently, like the Kerrang cover that became the one of saying like Kurt Cobain's dead was going to be, "Oh, Nirvana going to split up," because like he'd obviously just had that big overdose like
Right.
in Rome or wherever it was. And like Dave Grohl started writing his own songs and he'd done those Pocket Watch demos or whatever it was, or was about to do them, which became the first Foo Fighters album. I wonder whether they would have just gone, we've done all we can do. Would have been quite interesting to hear what Kurt Cobain's next band would have been though, because he was getting into like using loads of pedals and like weird.
Well, he
Would it
was
have been like the
totally
next-
changing. He'd started using other guitars and stuff. Actually, you were going to talk about.
But
all
yeah,
of that
we'll
sort
talk
of
about
thing
this
later, weren't
in a
you?
bit. Yeah.
So if the Foo Fighters are the wings to
The band the Beatles could have been.
Nirvana's Beatles, does that make what
Wait.
Cobain would have done?
No.
The
What,
Travelling
No.
Wilburys.
No,
Foo
no,
Fighters
I
aren't wings. Foo Fighters would have to be Thomas the Tank Engine.
But you could.
I don't understand.
because Ringo Starr did Thomas the Tank
Oh,
Engine.
okay,
Dave
right.
Grohl
No,
was the
no,
drummer.
but surely that's what Chris Novoselic goes off and does. Like his political campaigning or whatever he's doing is Thomas the Tank Engine.
Oh, I suppose so.
Dave Grohl goes off and does Wings, which is his pop-friendly supergroup.
Hey, and Dave
And then-
Grohl's even been in a band with Paul McCartney.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
well, Nirvana.
Kurt Cobain.
Kind of.
yeah, Nirvana.
And then Kurt Cobain would have gone off and done the John Lennon thing if we're talking about rock and roll metaphors. He would have released a string of highly unsuccessful solo albums and probably died a martyr later on down the line. Anyway, let's talk about some gear. Let's talk about Kurt Cobain's stuff and things. really good website that we use for this. Just getting some resources for this. Joe, what's the address?
KurtzEquipment.com is what we've been. I mean,
I've actually been using LiveNirvana.com, which is a website by their sound tech throughout the bulk of their career.
Oh wow!
So
that's
what's
cool.
really interesting is he talks about a lot of because obviously a lot of their gear was heavily customized, and he for Kurt Cobain, right? I've got, because I want to bring some Chris Novoselic into this, so I read up a lot on his gear, which is really interesting, which is why I think we should mention it.
Yeah, we can do that.
But he has kind of a couple of pages on all the weird, and it was really weird customization he did for Chris Novoselic.
He was using a Ripper. Most of the time?
Whoa. It's way more than that, which we'll go to in a bit.
We'll get onto him down the line. It's not his birthday.
The page on Chris Novoselic is kind of a page long. The page on Kurt Cobain isn't even a page. You have to download individual PDFs by it's not even a year. It's like maybe a month.
Oh wow, this website sounds. I've not even been on that. Like, I think the one that we're reading is like a summary of that. Essentially,
that's more suitable for what we're talking about here today. But yeah, really, if you're interested in his setup, they take you gig by gig through what he was using, which is remarkable, because of course this guy has a log.
He's probably got the lists of what he took out the door that day.
Yeah.
So I thought we'd start off by talking about Mustangs, and there is a quote by, I forget the guy's name, who was the guitar tech for them. You'll probably be able to find that. He's talking about Kurt Cobain and Mustangs, saying that Kurt loved Mustangs. That was like his favourite guitar.
Ernest Bailey.
I mean, I can't attribute this to him, but if you're saying he's the tech, then it probably is. He was saying that like Mustangs were Kurt's favourite guitar just because of the way they played, like small, you could throw them around. Got that kind of weird, like short scale, loads of like uncontrollable bends to it. And whether it was like stock vintage ones with those like ratty like single coils, or which you'd like get from pawn shops or whatever, or he was for most of the time playing Japanese ones.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Was he? Yeah.
He didn't like Mustang bridges though.
No.
He had to.
So what he was doing was a couple of things, like locking the bridges down and also routing them out for like full-size humbuckers. And you can see that in the modern Kurt Cobain Mustang signature.
Because the Kurt Cobain, because the traditional, I guess we should sort of outline the differences. I mean, you sort of what you'd consider your standard Mustang, which is the 65 reissue, the Japanese one, which is the one that I've got, is Mustang bridge, single coils, and there's 3 positions that you can have them in
for each pickup.
Like
a Jaguar.
Kind of. And then the Kurt Cobain signature Mustang is a Mexican-built one, and it's.
Wait, so the standard ones are Japanese?
The standard ones are Japanese.
Okay.
Yeah, the 65 reissue is Japanese.
Yeah.
And then the Mexican one, which is the Kurt Cobain one, is single coil in the neck.
Duncan?
Some sort of Duncan. It's like some sort of Duncan distortion. I'll look it up in a second.
I think it's probably a JB because they.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, check it out. But from reading what. This guitar tech was saying, Ernest Bailey. He was saying that most of the Mustangs and indeed the Jaguars, which we'll talk about in a bit, started off with Damasio super distortions.
Well, that's it. It might be that. I
don't think it is, because I think Fender have got a closer tie to Seymour Duncan.
He went through quite a few pickup options though, didn't he, on his Mustangs? He wasn't set on the Seymour Duncans.
the other thing about
he
it
used
is
some really weird
here
things.
We go, Kurt Cobain Mustang. Sorry, I'm literally just looking up right now. The other thing with the is Tunematic.
Yes.
Here we go. Look. So it is. I'm saying look. It's a podcast. You can't look. It is a JB.
Yeah. That's what I thought, because reading,
and it's a standard Mustang pickup in the neck.
Yes. So reading through this description from Ernest Bailey, he's saying that he started off using loads of super distortions, and he had those in everything. And there's a reason for that we'll go on to in a minute. And then he swapped them out for Duncan JBs. I mean, if someone's looking at buying a Mustang and they're into the Kurt Cobain thing, I guess the signature one is the obvious one to go for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of obviously a little bit biased in the fact that I really like the 65 because I own one.
That's what you've got.
But actually, something I didn't realise, they're all 725 radius.
Yeah.
The neck is 725 radius, which I didn't actually realise.
So for people who don't know, that's kind of more curved than a kind of modern fretboard.
Yeah, I really really like. I like Mustangs in general. I like short scale guitars. For that very same reason, is they're very mental. They're
just unpredictable. When I pick up a Mustang, it's like I might come up with something amazing, or I might do a bend that just like completely throws it off. And
they're super super easy to play, really really fun. And you've got a lot of options on there if that's what you want. So I guess we should go into that a little bit. So each pickup, and I believe this is the same for the Cobain as well as the standard one, the Japanese one. The Japanese one has got, I'm just checking now, yeah, it is true. So the Japanese one has got, there's 3 positions for each pickup. You've got on, off, or phase.
Okay.
So you can have like the neck pickup on, or the neck pickup off, or you can, I don't really need to explain it. I've just sort of explained it.
You've explained it.
So you can, and that's the same for the Cobain one as well. The Cobain Mustang's really cool because it is that it's tunematic,
but it's still tremolo.
But it's still a tremolo, yeah. Although I tend to advise against using a tremolo on a Mustang.
Well,
because they're that short scale, they're a little bit. I mean, the thing is guitars are the size, and the guitars are the size they are for a reason. And once you start messing around with the scale length of guitars, you can get into sort of tuning issues and sort of unpredictabilities, which is one of the reasons that they are so cool. But with like a shorter scale instrument, I tend to recommend going for a heavier gauge of string. So if you're like with my one, I've got 11s on it. Now I've got 11s on everything, but I've got 11s on the Mustang through functionality more than anything else. The heavier scale, the heavier strings just tend to offset the scale length just that little bit, just make tuning a little bit more reliable. The thing is with the tremolo, the tremolo on Mustangs isn't great anyway. If you want a tremolo guitar, you don't buy a Mustang.
Yeah.
If you're going to be using a trem, don't buy a Mustang because that's not what you want. Go for like a Jazzmaster or a Strat.
Something that's something that's full scale, I guess, and something that can just handle a bit more of punishment. Like the trem is so wild on. I almost liken like playing a Mustang to how would I describe it?
Riding a raging bull.
I was going to say. I was literally going to say riding a jet ski. Like, I'm sure if you just go in a straight line and you go at a moderate pace, it's completely fine. As soon as you start turning round and gunning the accelerator, you're going to end up in a whole world of trouble.
That's a really good analogy.
Yeah. Mustangs are jet skis.
Yeah, there we go. The Mustang is super cool. Well, and the Cobain one comes in 3 finishes, which are all wicked. You've got Fiesta Red, which is obviously super lovely. You've got Sonic Blue.
Brilliant.
And then you've got Dark Sonic Blue with a stripe. And they all look great. They look absolutely wicked.
From reading up on it today, those are all finishes that he had. The Fiesta Red and the Sonic Blue are the finishes on the Japanese ones that he had. Mm-hmm. And then he had a vintage American one that was modded, that was blue with the stripe.
Dark Sonic Blue.
Exactly.
Okay, right.
And also, interestingly, you're saying about the bridges there, from reading the Guitar Tech's description of what he was doing to the guitars, he was locking those bridges down.
Yeah, I think you've got to really. I mean, that's what whilst I don't sort of want to dwell too much on what I do, that's what I've done with mine. I just don't think it's the guitar for someone who's into sort of that tremolo, unless what you are doing is that sort of big weird vibey sound, and it doesn't matter if it goes out of tune a little bit, because in that case a Mustang is perfect,
Yeah. Well, you got to think about the origin of the instrument. So they were designed as like almost like a beginner, cheapy version of a Strat.
Was because a Mustang came out of the Duosonic, right? No,
So it's a bit of a complicated
not a Duosonic. What's the
So Music Master.
Music Master?
And Duosonic was a 2 pickup Music
Did
Master,
the Music Master
essentially.
exist as a guitar as well? This is how lame
Yes.
some of my guitar knowledge is.
I think we talked about this not too long ago. Because the Music Master came out way earlier than you expected
Yes.
to.
Yeah.
56 or
Yeah.
55, like
Yeah,
really early.
The first Music Master basses was 60, dead on.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And then and you had like the Music Master and the Mustang. The only difference being you got a simple single coil bang in the middle of the Music Master, and the Mustang had a split mini single coil
Okay.
for
Yeah.
bass.
Yeah. So
What was the difference on guitar?
so on guitar, Duosonic is a single pickup.
Different
Duosonic
scratch plates.
and
No, sorry,
Duosonic
Duosonic is a dual pickup.
Duosonic has been reissued, and there's the Squire one you can get
Yes.
now.
Yes. Music Master originally.
Oh, the blonde one with the gold scratch.
It's
Exactly.
Desert Sand, but yeah.
Music
Sorry.
Master originally only had a single pickup. Then you got the Duosonic, which was the 2 pickups, and then Mustang, I think, was then the Trem version.
Right, okay.
Of that. So you got to think this was a starter instrument. They were very cheap, and the Trems just have kind of never been designed to be a precision thing. So
No.
locking it down, this guitar's been adopted partly due to Kurt Cobain into this more kind of like indie, lo-fi, thrashing the guitar
Yeah.
around, where having a trem is kind of just not going to work. So it is a bit of a weird one that even on the Kurt Cobain reissue they still keep that like moving trem, but I would say lock it down if you're into the Cobain thing.
Yeah.
Definitely. So talking about modifying guitars, one of the most iconic guitars that Kurt played, I guess, was the Fender Jaguar. And again, along with the Mustangs, kind of really reignited that passion for the Fender offsets, because throughout the 80s no one really cared about these guitars. People were looking at things like, you see like, I don't know, the Gibson Sonics and things like that. Like they were trying to do like weird futuristic stuff, and people have kind of forgotten about these old guitars. You get Strats and Tellys very cheap, and you get these offsets even cheaper because they weren't
They weren't popular at all.
guitars at the time. And then comes this kind of plaid-wearing, long-haired grunger, bringing these guitars back into the mainstream and getting them visible again.
And don't you think it's funny, kind of what he's done to the Jaguar? Bear in mind what Leo Fender designed and released the Jaguar and Jazzmaster for. Bear in mind their like original advertising images.
Dudes on a surfboard playing these guitars.
I was thinking more of the orchestral pictures.
Yeah.
They would do with the guitarists at the front playing a Jaguar or a Jazzmaster, and these dudes were in suits, and it was all sort of, they were drawn pictures.
Yeah.
But it was the Fender advertising campaign for Jaguar and Jagmasters when it came out, and its slogan was something along the lines of a premium guitar for a premium player, that sort of thing. And they were really like, these are guitars for gentlemen. That's what they were. And yet, because of Kurt Cobain playing them, to this day, most of the grungy guys I know
play offsets.
Play offsets. And
you think about Leo Fender at that time. Where'd you go? You've released the telly. It's been taken up by kind of like bluesmen, R&B, soul bands have like really kind of gone for this shape. So you think, okay, I'm going to release a premium model, the Strat, with more features, and then it gets taken up by like rock and roll guys, young rock and roll guys, and then you think, okay, I need to release something else, more expensive, as like you're saying, the premium model, and that's kind of what it was. It was seen as like they were seen as quite a classy instrument, I think. And then they kind of got lost in the kind of hair metal and the kind of rock set of 70s and 80s. These guitars did get kind of lost. Can you remember seeing any footage ever from the 70s and 80s where people are playing Jazzmasters or Jaguars?
Well, they were wrong for the time, weren't they?
Yeah.
It was just, they came out at an odd time for like where music sort of progressed.
Okay, here's what I was just sort of thinking about this. Dinosaur Jr.
Yeah.
J Mascis.
Yeah.
Pre-Nirvana.
Yeah.
Definitely influence on Nirvana.
Yeah.
Name a more iconic offset player, arguably other than Kurt Cobain, than J Mascis. I mean, J Mascis is the man when it comes to an offset. He's like, I'd probably even place him higher than Kurt Cobain if it came to sort of who sort of is important when it comes to the popularity of the offset.
Maybe for guitarists, but like in terms of public consciousness, I guess
yeah. But I mean, surely J Mascis, if we're going down this route of sort of the popularisation of the offset, it's got to be through Jay Maskis.
His signature Squire is brilliant.
His signature Squire is excellent.
I don't know why it's not a Fender.
Well, they used to do a Fender.
Oh,
yeah. They used to do a
Sparkly
Fender.
purple.
It was purple sparkle. Yeah.
So
and
good.
he actually came in to the store one day whilst it was there, and he was like, I've heard this a lot, and you do sort of hear this a lot. You hear like, oh yeah, like, you know, XYZ, this like famous guitarist is really nice, and you're like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Jay Maskis came in, and he was so nice. Like, he was really, really nice, and he was just like, oh hey, can I take that? And I was like, no. And he was like, oh, I'm only kidding. And like, he was just a really, really nice bloke. And he like, there was I remember just this guy freaking out. It was like, oh my god, Jay Maskis is there. Have you got anything I can? And I'm like, yeah, man, just go and say hello. He's really nice. But yeah, Jay Maskis was like super, super cool. But yeah, the Jay Maskis, the original Fender Jay Maskis Jazzmaster, which I think was a Japanese one.
Yeah.
Was purple sparkle.
That's so cool.
And it was really, really cool. And for some reason it was discontinued, and we didn't really see any Jazzmasters for a couple years, and then all of a sudden that sort of crept in.
The Squire is brilliant.
The Squire one is so good. It's probably the best guitar that Squire make. That or the Matt Freeman P bass.
I think Fender have got it nailed, knowing about cycles of cool. You know, they've kind of gone, when you look at their line, they're thinking, right, okay, so people who used to like grunge and punk have now got some money, like when they were kids. Let's have a look. What signature model should we do? Okay, Jay Maskis, let's do that. Kurt Cobain, let's do that. Matt Freeman, who was in Rancid, let's do that. And Mark Hoppus, okay, let's do that. That's been out for a while.
Like,
I know.
Still popular.
But the Mark Hoppus though did get, like, as we've all got older, the Mark Hoppus that came out as a really sort of cheap kind of basic Fender, and they did run with a Squire model of it for a very, very brief time that you don't see many of.
Really?
But yeah,
I don't remember that.
did. I don't know if it got released over here, but I've seen a couple sort of come up internationally.
Wow.
But yeah, the Fender Mark Hoppus got a facelift last year and became really premium.
Oh, definitely.
And had like 3 finishes. And,
yes. Yeah. I mean, Fender are very, very good at capitalising on it, I think, in a way that no one else is, you know. Anyway, I've completely forgotten how we got off track. What I was going to say...
talking about offset guitars.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say is the difference between Kurt Cobain and Jay Maskis is... I remember walking into Virgin Megastores and buying 2 different Kurt Cobain posters for my wall when I was younger, and in both he was playing a Jaguar. You certainly couldn't say that about Jay Maskis.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But the interesting thing about Kurt Cobain's Jag is, so the one that he's most famous like for playing is a '65 Sunburst Jag with 2 humbuckers. And the interesting thing about it is he didn't do the modifications.
No, he bought it.
He bought it like that, and they've never.
That is cool. I didn't know that.
They've never managed to track down the original owner of the guitar.
Are you kidding?
No. So basically, and that was like one of the first guitars that he got famous for using, I guess. So there's this like iconic guitar, this 65 Sunburst Jag that originally had 2 DiMarzios, then got replaced by JBs. And no one knows who like made this cool looking guitar. And apparently, I was speaking to the guys from Fender about it because they've obviously just reissued the Kurt Cobain Jag this year in a new old stock finish. So they've been doing the Relic one made in Mexico for a while. They now do the NOS one, and they've been doing loads of work with that guitar, and they like kind of know what it is and stuff. But no one knows who made this guitar. I just think it's such a cool story. That's such an iconic guitar. Like all of like Jimi Hendrix guitars, you can kind of trace their origin, and all of the big iconic guitars, we kind of know where they came from. This guitar, he just bought it in a shop like that.
This is a funny thing about from reading this Ernest Bailey's website. The bulk of the gear, because he goes through each individual bit of gear and tells you how long they had it, how many of this sort of instrument they had, what they did to it, and what shows and albums it was used on.
Yeah.
And item after item I was reading, bought in a random pawn shop in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Bought here. That they weren't being given stuff.
No.
They weren't buying stuff new. It was all from weird pawn shops.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at companies at that time, like people that were getting signature models, it wasn't people from the grunge scene. Like these guys, this was like a massive turning point. And yeah, he was going out and buying guitars in like pawn shops, and it wasn't like Kurt Cobain's signature model. That came a lot later, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You know, people like Kip Winger of Winger was still getting a signature bass. And, you know, it was still all about that kind of hair metal and glam rock. And it didn't, although the kind of music was a big turning point, I don't think the industry had quite changed at that point. I don't think Kurt was seen as quite the guitar hero that he now is.
Well, yeah, and that I think is like that sort of lasting legacy. I mean, just as an aside, one of the articles I came across while we were sort of looking, you know, sort of doing a little bit of research on this was an article from 2012 that Spin magazine published. Now I realise Spin magazine is, you know, it's not like a guitarist's like magazine, you know, it's a sort of pop culture kind of magazine, but I think that's kind of an interesting way to look at it. So of the top 5 guitarists you've got in here, Jay Mascis.
Oh, yeah.
So these are the top 5. Jay Mascis.
What's the top 5?
Top 5 guitarists of all time.
Okay.
The top 5. The top 5.
Jay Mascis
The top 5 greatest guitarists of all time. You've got Jay Mascis at number 5. Kurt Cobain at number 4. Now, as I say, this isn't coming at it from a guitarist's point of view. This is coming at it from, so it's Spin magazine, so it's like a sort of pop culture, you know, and I think that's an interesting way to look at it. We see these things and we're like, okay, who's the best guitarist of all time? And you know, the three of us would sit there and we'd all come up with very different answers. But, you know, if you throw about some names, you're going to say, you know,
John Jughead from Screeching Weasel.
Omar Rodriguez Lopez from the Mars Volta.
If we're being serious and talking about it from a guitarist point of view, you know, you'd probably throw out names like Robert Johnson, you know, Clapton. I don't know, like, you know, these aren't people. I mean, whatever. Anyway, I think it's interesting to look at it from as I say, like a pop culture sort of journalism point of view. Who these people think are the most important people in terms of getting people to play guitar, which I think is also an important thing to bear in mind. So your top 5 are Jay Mascis, Kurt Cobain at number 4. So Jay Mascis, Jazzmaster. Kurt Cobain, Jaguar, Mustang. John Fahey, who I don't know who he is, some blues dude apparently. I'm sure lots of people are rolling their eyes as they listen to this. And then Kevin Shields from My Bloody Valentine, Jazzmaster. And then the top is Thurston Moore, Jazzmaster. Like,
what?
Yeah. So it's just like I just think that's really cool. I think that like coming at it from a slightly different angle, you know, you can say, you know, oh yeah, the Strat and the Telly and the Les Paul, they're the iconic guitars. I mean, the Jazzmaster and Jaguar Mustangs, they're cool as all hell, man.
And that was Jay Cross with the Hipster Guitar Report. Back on topic. One of the first guitars that I ever bought actually was from GAK a long time before I started working there.
Not that long ago.
Well, a couple of years before I started working there.
Was it a 7-string Ibanez?
No, it wasn't. That was Jay.
It was a Music Master, wasn't it?
No, I did buy one of those.
The first guitar I bought from GAK was a 7-string Ibanez.
I know, that's why we brought it up.
That was the joke.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, sorry.
Get with it. No, one of the first guitars I bought was actually before I started working here, and it was a Japanese Strat because I was a massive Nirvana fan, and there weren't really.
He bought a guitar that he never used.
No, he did. He did. He used loads and loads of Japanese Strats, as well as the offsets.
He used to smash them up.
Yeah, so he would buy like loads of like Japanese standard Strats and smash them, and he had some that were a bit more like ones that he would keep. Like there's that one. I think it says like something about throwing a rock to kill a cop or something. It's like an iconic sticker that's on there. You see him on loads of the posters. That's one of the other posters that I had of Kurt Cobain.
I think I might have had that as well.
Yeah.
I think I bought it in Athena in Churchill Square.
Yeah. I think we may have bought it from the same place. But yeah, so he would buy these Japanese Strats, and the reason that he would buy loads of Japanese stuff, we should mention, is that you could get loads of left-handed stuff. And obviously being left-handed, and the American market at the time wasn't producing that many left-handed guitars.
Because that's the thing, is like, you know, you think of other sort of iconic lefties, you know, any picture you see of Hendrix, it's always a right-handed guitar turned upside down. I can't think of a single picture of Cobain playing a right-handed guitar.
No. It's always left.
Come on, it was. I mean, we're talking about like nearly
Yeah.
30 years
Yeah,
old.
well,
He didn't
But
have
still-
the same
but
restriction.
Geez, think about left-handed guitarists now. There's so little choice. Even now,
true.
there's far
Little
far
choice
less.
on finish, but not
There's
not
a lot of model,
model.
but it comes back to feeding back into the him buying pawn shop guitars. Is that the guitars that were being heavily advertised and mass produced at that time were things like Kramer's and Hamer's and Jackson and stuff like that, and he obviously didn't want to play that sort of guitar. That was the sort of guitar you could get left-handed at the time, and that it's not exactly a grunge guitar, is it? Like a fluorescent pink Kramer Strat or whatever. So he was going into these shops and going, oh, there's a Mustang, left-handed, wicked. I'll get that. It's really cheap. And then it's feeds back into this kind of iconic guitar player that we know today. But that's why he was playing all these Japanese Strats, is because they were producing a lot of left-handed stuff in Japan, and he could easily get decent quality guitars on a regular basis because he was like smashing them up and taking them on tour.
But a lot of the time he fixed them himself as well, didn't he?
Yeah, him and the guitar tech were like fixing them up. Like I was reading some of the articles on the Kurt's Equipment site where he's saying like, yeah, smashed this one up and a bit of it fell off, but we just glued it back together and it was fine for the next gig. And I think that speaks volumes about the quality of Japanese builds, really.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember reading that the biography, Heavier Than Heaven, the Charles R. Cross biography on Cobain.
Isn't it Azerard?
Azerard did Our Bank Could Be Your Life.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're right.
Michael Azerard did Our Bank Could Be Your Life, which is a very, very good book and something that you should read, especially for context on this sort of era. I mean, there's not
on this podcast.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's not a chapter on Nirvana, but like on this sort of era, there's you've got that Our Bank Could Be Your Life has got a chapter on Black Flag, Minor Threat, but also Dinosaur Jr., Mudhoney, Sonic Youth. Really, really great book about the sort of the American underground between like the late 80s and early 90s. Anyway, I read that Charles R. Cross book, Heavier. I'm sure it's called Heavier Than Heaven.
It is, yeah, that's the.
And it's I remember at the time. I mean, I probably read this book like 15 years ago, and I remember at the time just being like, wow, he would fix the things himself. Like, that's really cool. Like, surely he's got people to do that. And sort of that the idea of the rock star sort of like became a slightly different thing. I just think that's quite cool, the fact that he would do all this stuff himself, and that to a certain degree, it's important to look after your gear. Even if you're smashing it up. Well, yeah, but it is. He'd smash it up, but he knew that he could fix it to start again the next day, which I think is cool.
On that, kind of talking about him, like Kurt Cobain being divergent from your kind of standard rock star, I think that learning about the kind of guitars that he played speaks kind of volumes about what was going on at the time. And he'd obviously become known as this kind of like iconic guy for playing these offsets, and that fed into like grunge, and you had to wear like a plaid like flannel shirt like Jay's got on right now. And play these offset guitars, and then of course that like spawns imitators. And I was just reading about some stuff like towards the end of his life, getting towards like 93 and 94. Really funny at the time, Dodd, who had started producing a grunge pedal, and apparently he was just buying them and then like throwing them out into the audience like, they're trading off this thing that we've built and this is ridiculous, and we're just going to chuck it into the audience. And similarly to that, the story further to that, towards the end of the In Utero, or In Utero, however you want to say it, tour, he started using tellies. Vintage tellies, because he just wanted to shake off this image of like, this is what grunge is and this is how it's marketed, and loads of people just wear check shirts and play these offset guitars, and he started just dressing a bit nicer and playing Telecasters on stage.
That's cool, I didn't know that.
And he started using firstly like a 70s, I think it was, or maybe a 60s telly.
Wasn't this around the time he changed to Fender amps, because he used a lot of power amps?
Yeah, started using like Fender amps and stuff like that. And
like twins and stuff?
Yeah, we'll talk about the amps a bit more in detail in a second. But he started using like twins and deluxes and started playing tellies. And he also started to get a little more uncomfortable with just Jaguars and Jazzmasters in general. So he went to Fender and designed the Jag-Stang in conjunction with them. And interestingly, from what his guitar tech is saying, is that it was made to be just a one-off for him. And then subsequently to his death, obviously Fender owned it and then produced this, big signature guitar.
The Jag-Stang's interesting. I think it's something that we should talk about a little bit, because it's a hybrid of obviously a Jaguar and a Mustang, but it's a hybrid in a very literal sense. They've taken the top half of a Jaguar and the bottom half of a Mustang.
No, other way round.
The bottom half of a Jaguar and the top half of a Mustang, and just sort of glued them together.
Well,
and I just think
it's an offset Mustang, isn't it?
Yeah, I just think it's really really cool.
It's definitely, they're certainly an interesting guitar. Like you say, it is literally a mashup of those two guitars. He took a picture of the two guitars and cut it in the middle and put it together and sent it to Fender and said, "Can you make me this?"
It always looked like. Did you ever see any of those the Bender guitars?
No.
They're Fender guitars, but they look melted.
Yes.
And I always thought that's what it was when I first saw it.
Yeah.
I thought he had one of those weird, melted looking.
Well, I think the design works. I think because of the designs of the two original guitars are so good.
Yeah.
I think it definitely works. And they produced that guitar, like I said, subsequently, after his death. And it was reissued recently, wasn't it?
They did a Squire version.
Yes.
I don't think there was a Fender version, but I don't think there's been a Fender version recently. But I think the Squire version is still available.
No.
I think it might be.
No, definitely not.
Really?
No.
I think it might be in a boring finish.
No, definitely not.
Okay, cool.
100%
Cool,
not.
I believe you.
you. So what pickups are in there? Was that just JB and a
It's a single coil and a humbucker. I don't know. I'll see if I can look it up.
similar sort of vibe?
But yeah, that...
they're both angled as well, aren't they?
Yeah. Definitely. If people don't know what a Jag-Stang is, they should definitely go and check one out, because the story behind it is very, very interesting. And it kind of raises questions about, should this guitar have been produced after, and, did he design it, or was it designed for him? And there's loads of really good reading to be done around the Jag-Stang.
It's a Texas Special in the neck and a DiMarzio H3 in the bridge.
Right, okay.
The DiMarzio H3 humbucker is not available as an individual product, but the closest sounding one is the DiMarzio DP158 Evolution neck pickup.
So a pickup designed especially for that guitar, essentially. So there we go. That kind of gives you
said neck pickup.
Yeah,
but it's in the bridge.
It is. Yeah.
Wow,
very weird.
okay.
Very, very weird. Originally produced in the fall of 1995 after Cobain's death, Fender Japan reissued the Jag-Stang 2 years after its 2001 cancellation. So it ran for a good 6 years, which is pretty full on. Reissued the Jag-Stang 2 years after its 2001 cancellation due to popular demand. Fender once again discontinued importing the Jag-Stang from Japan as of May 2006. It was available in Sonic Blue and Fiesta Red. So they've not officially been available outside of Japan since 2006.
Wow.
So there we go.
Seems like only yesterday that you could buy them. So there we go. That's an overview of Cobain's guitars, really. And this certainly isn't a kind of how to sound like Cobain podcast. I just wanted to talk more in detail about some of the stuff that he used. A lot of the stuff kind of isn't available now, or you would kind of struggle to get hold of. But, hopefully that's given people a bit more of a kind of insight into the kind of gear that he was using. Should we talk about some amps?
Why not?
So, primarily, throughout, Bleach and Nevermind, which are the first two Nirvana albums, he was using a Mesa Boogie Studio 22 preamp, which is a really flexible, as the name suggests, designed for studio preamp, and then pairing it up with the most random list of power amps that you could imagine. Things like Crown, I think there was a Marshall one in there, but just loads of stuff, basically. And again, it kind of speaks to that. He's kind of a unwilling guitar icon, really, in that this guitar rig is so random. It's not like, he's got an endorsement from a company, it's doing this or whatever. It's just it's patched together.
I always kind of thought with Cobain that, reading his list of amps, that it wasn't so much that he was even interested in amps until his later career, until we started using Fenders. The stuff that he used, it was just he just wanted
it to be loud.
Stuff that worked.
Yeah, well, that's it. There was no, nothing, he wasn't using anything Valve, and it was all preamps and power amps, and with that sort of awful 80s stuff. It was just whatever
just gear that was available.
Volume. Yeah. Whatever he could turn up at a gig and would last a few gigs. That seemed to be the concept. But you know, he was pretty much, he was bang on that. He was all about the DS1, wasn't he? And his sound was the DS1, I think, more than anything.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what that Boogie preamp is pretty kind of neutral, and the fact that he used just like flat response power amps is kind of neutral, and it is all about the guitar, and it's all about the playing, and it's kind of all about the pedals in the front end. Let's do pedals in a minute, because it is worth mentioning that towards the end of Nirvana, he was using like twins and deluxes, again, like clean, just super clean stuff.
So what, that and a DS1?
Yeah. So
and of course, we're talking about pedals in a minute.
That's insane.
I know. When you think about that, setup, you don't think grunge at all. Like a twin and a DS1.
Well, I think he had a DS2, didn't he, by that time?
Well, yeah, but I mean,
by the time he was using twins.
They're only DS2's a very similar circuit. It's not really. It's just got that extra turbo.
But do you want to know what happened to his DS1?
Go on.
Chris Novoselic was using it, which is funny because the other day we spoke about Boss pedals, and I said I'd take a DS1 for bass.
You did, yeah.
There you go.
There we go.
I didn't even know then, but yeah, Chris Novoselic used it.
You and your boy KN.
So yeah, twins and deluxes, which is weird. And in between, he was using like different Marshall cabs and occasionally a Marshall head and stuff like that. But in the later years, all Fender, all run super clean with pedals in the front end. And like we were saying, you know, what would he have done afterwards? It does seem like he was going down the route of
a country album.
No, he was Telly's and a deluxe.
Yeah,
maybe. It does seem like he was getting really into pedals and buying like some more obscure stuff, but always with that foundation of DS1 or DS2, and then slightly right towards the end, he was using a Sansamp Classic.
Yeah,
like
really,
wow, like such a weird setup. You imagine like seeing some of those really late on gigs, like Telly into a Sansamp into a twin. It's like, that is not Kurt Cobain's setup.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
No.
It's such a weird thing, that kind of anomaly. And of course, kind of always present on the Nirvana stuff, small clone. Electroharmonic small clone.
Yeah.
And I would say if someone is thinking about getting into that kind of Nirvana sound, I would say that and a DS1 or DS2 and maybe a Big Muff would be like your core elements to that, and to any sort of grunge sound, really. Do you want to talk about a bit about Chris Novoselic?
I was hoping that you'd sort of let me do that. Well, just because it was really interesting, just because he had a really odd setup for a bass player, and actually I feel kind of in relevance to Kurt Cobain, I think his setup seemed to have an awful lot of influence on what Kurt Cobain was using. I mean, a good proportion of the stuff I was reading about his setup said, borrowed from Kurt.
Right.
At the end of it. And a lot of it was. I mean, things like he used Marshall 412s.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, like guitar cabs.
Like 1960s?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Those were the cabs that he was going through. Towards the end, he started using Mesa Boogie 215s. Totally awesome.
Classic
cabinet.
rig.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. But the bulk of the stuff that you will have heard him on, he was going through, live. He was going through a pair of Marshall 412s.
Yeah,
which is random. And then he went through kind of a few amps, and certainly as they started getting endorsed and stuff, you saw other brands coming in and more proper gear coming in. But the bulk of the stuff that we think about for him, he had he used to have like an SVT, a 400T,
okay,
which he used for the bulk of Nevermind and stuff.
Yeah,
but then when he hit In Utero, they toured with a band called, it was a 3-letter word beginning with T.
Toe?
Tad.
Tad.
Tad is named after the front man, who is huge. He's like a massively fat man who I don't know if he's still alive, but that's all I know about Tad.
Okay, cool. Well, they were playing with Tad, and Chris Novoselic was like, I need the bass sound that Tad have. It's so much better than mine. So they worked out the sort of sound, him and their tech worked out the sort of sound they'd got, messed around with some things, and what they ended up doing is using this 100-watt, high-watt custom amp that Kurt had bought that Kurt didn't like.
Right.
They used this 100-watt guitar amp, ripped out the valves in it, put 6550s in there, so bass amp style valves, fit it with them and rebiased the whole thing for these bass valves, fitted like something else different in there that I totally didn't understand, that gave it a better bass response, and basically turned this thing into like a 100-watt bass amp, which of course was fine because he just turned it up on full, so it was just full drive, and he was running that into a pair of Marshall 412s, which is in utero.
412s are, I mean, personally, I think they're like the ideal bass cab. I think 12s are such a good speaker for bass.
I agree. I really like 12s. You can. There aren't many on the market at the moment. Not many bass manufacturers are making 12s. I mean, pretty much Mark Bass do some, but not a lot. They've really shut down on that market. You can get some from TC Electronic. They do some 212 cabs, and the only other manufacturer I can think of is Orange, who do their 212 isobaric smart power cabinet, where the two 12-inch cabinets are in a vacuum and are sat behind each other.
Yeah, so it's the size of a 1x12.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But
do you know what I think that is? I think 12s are a really hard sell if you're in a guitar shop, because they're not particularly toppy, so you don't get that like sparkle, like, oh wow, when I slap the the D, okay, or when I pop the D, I don't get that like crisp response, and they're not particularly bassy, so you can't like hit a low B and have it like trouser flap, but live 12s just cut through everything. For me, on bass, they're the ideal speaker.
I agree. I think 12s are brilliant. I've always found 10s too toppy, but I know everyone...
I just think the front of house should be dealing with all your low end. On stage, you want to hear yourself, and a 12 is perfect for that. It just cuts through so well. In the same way that I think 10s do for guitar. I think actually a 10-inch speaker for guitar is much more suited.
Well, I've said this before. I'm a big into the 410 combination. Yeah. I really like the DeVille 410. I think is a great guitar amp. The problem is there's 4 speakers in there, and so it weighs a ton. You know, they're so good though. They sound absolutely amazing. The 410, and there's also a PV. The PV
Classic 50 410.
No, the Delta Blues 410.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Delta Blues do some weird stuff because they do a 15.
They do a 1x15 and they do a 410.
All bass associated.
It's so good. That range of amps is so good. I'd love one of those. Like
the
they
PV
sound
Delta
so,
stuff is
so
amazing.
Good. Yeah. The like PV amps in general, PV guitar amps, PV sort of tweed guitar amps, if you will, I think are all really, really good. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the sort of more metal stuff that they do, but the Delta Blues stuff, the 1x15 and the 410 is wicked, and the Classic 30 and the Classic 50. I mean,
I agree.
I think those are brilliant amps.
I think it's really strange to see a company like that. I know this is slightly off topic.
I was going to say we're miles off topic, but while we're going down this route, I've got something to say about PV. Crack on with what you were going to.
Very well. Yeah, I just think it speaks volumes to see a company so associated with sort of metal,
rock and metal,
rock and metal as PVR, to release something like the Delta series and the Classic series, and for them to be so good at making tweed amps. I mean, really moving in on kind of Fender's territory. And other
absolutely.
amps territory.
I mean, the thing is a lot of the time, if someone comes into the shop and they say, oh, I want to buy a Fender amp. What else is there that maybe I can, and that I will always suggest a Classic. And even before I finished my sentence, people are rolling their eyes saying, I'm not going to buy a PV amp. I'm not going to buy a PV amp.
Yeah, they kind of get written off, don't they?
They're really, really uncool. They're really uncool. And I
Biffy
can't
Clyro,
really?
They use them.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I've spoken to PV about this in the past, and I've said, the problem is you're not cool. And they're like, yeah, we know we're not cool. We know we want to be, but we know we're not. But you just need to give the stuff a chance, because the Classic stuff is so good. Like, much better drive sound. Like if you want a Classic 30, you'll get a much better drive sound out of that than you will out of a Deluxe. Blues Deluxe.
I think if you're buying a Hot Rod or Blues Deluxe, then you want to pair it up with a drive pedal. You don't have to do that with Classic 30.
No.
Really rate the drive on there.
Yeah.
Really nice indeed. While we're on that topic, just quickly on PV amps, I think we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. PV Valve King 2 was one of the most impressive products at NAMM. It was actually released before NAMM, but the first time I heard it was on the NAMM show floor. Valve King 2 is easily one of the best sounding small guitar valve heads. So good.
What is that?
I can't remember off the top of my head. It's variable. You can switch it up and down.
Really?
Yes.
And they're Valve?
Yes.
Wow.
PV are kind of becoming
built-in attenuator?
Built-in attenuator, USB output for direct recording off the head, and also it's got a mic simulated XLR output as well. So you can run it with no, as far as I'm aware, you can run it with no load out of either XLR into whatever you want to record to, or into a PA, or USB, and it works as a sound card into your computer.
That's insanity.
They sound amazing.
PV are fast becoming our guilty pleasure on the podcast. From you talking about that to you mentioning the classics.
Yeah.
To me
You love
talking
the
about
basses.
the bass. I love the basses. But
We're so far off topic that it's.
do you think
we should
did
reel it
Nirvana
in?
ever use PV products?
No, but ironically, the Pixies, who are a big influence on Nirvana, loved PV. They absolutely loved PV Bandits, like solid state.
Really?
Yeah. There's, they're not using them now because I've just seen a rig rundown where they're using some Fender stuff. But yeah, I remember an interview with them back in the day saying how like the Bandit was like the ultimate go-to amp because you could just take it out, give it as much abuse as you want, and it would sound exactly the same every night. Which is for a touring band kind of what you want. You want it to sound half decent, but you want it to sound the same wherever you take it. And sometimes valve amps don't do that. Sometimes they can just sound weird depending on voltage or how they've been treated during the day or how hot the valves can get or how cold the amp is. Transistor amp, you just plug it in and it will sound the same every time. And the PV Bandit is a great sounding transistor amp. Have you got any more to say about Chris Novoselic, or should we do some stuff picks?
No, let's do some stuff picks.
J Cross, what have you been playing this week?
Well, I was sort of inspired by, and I don't like saying it while he's sat next to me, but I was kind of inspired by Joe's pick last week of the second-hand viola bass.
Oh yeah,
that we had in, and today I bought in a guitar that you don't often see, but you see all the time.
That doesn't make any sense.
Well, doesn't it? No, it doesn't. But the today I bought in secondhand a Les Paul traditional.
Oh yeah,
12-string.
Whoa.
Yes.
Hold on there.
Yes, a 12-string traditional. Now, I kind of think that calling it a traditional is a bit of a cop-out because I don't actually think it's a traditional. For me, what makes a traditional is super heavy body, little to no chambering, and a really chunky neck. That to me is a traditional. What this is it's I mean I don't know the insides of it, but it doesn't feel like a super heavy body.
You think it might be like standard chambering?
I think it might have some chambering or weight relief or however you want to sort of whatever the semantics are. I think there's some weight relief in there, and the neck feels more like a 60s neck to me than a 50s neck. It's definitely not a traditional neck. But it has a 57 Classic in the neck and a 57 Classic Plus in the bridge, so it does have that sort of real iconic 50s sound, if not feel. But it's a 12-string, and you just don't see them.
I can't even imagine what a 12-string Les Paul sounds like.
Have you never played one?
No,
because they were production line for a while. We haven't had any in for a while. I remember we had a Honeyburst one in a little while ago, and it was cool. But this one that we got in now is a Heritage Cherry one, and it is way cooler.
Okay.
But yeah, it is really, really lovely guitar. It sounds so good. It sounds so good. Really. I mean, it's everything you want it to be. Super ringy, but with all that low end and sort of grit that you'd expect from a Les Paul. So
I'm very, very curious to try it.
Yeah.
Like I say, I can't really imagine what a 12-string Les Paul sounds like. I'm going to have to make my way over to the shop and plug it in.
Yeah,
I think.
Like Thin Lizzy, I imagine.
Did they use a 12-string Les Paul?
No, but all their guitars always played the same thing as each other.
Oh, no, but they were doing like harmonies.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing.
You could tune it up.
You could tune. It's not. I wouldn't advise that. Let's
yeah,
not advise that.
It's really, really cool. It's
I'm
really,
into
really
it.
cool. They're like 1,500 quid new, and we've got this one second hand. It's $1,000. Yeah, really, really, really cool guitar.
Joe Branton, what have you been playing this week?
This week I have mostly been playing the Fender Coronado bass.
Okay, good. Thanks for that dramatic. There's no need. So these came in a little while ago. Why have you just been playing them this week?
Because last week I played the second-hand Hofner violin bass that we've got in, and I thought it was the most perfect thing ever. And I simultaneously realised that I don't have £1,200. So I was thinking, I like short scale. I think it's cool, and I don't own a short scale bass. And I wanted something that was like retro, that would sound amazing with flats, and that kind of had that really sort of that slightly clunky old feel to it, where sort of before bass got so obsessed with being perfect to play and sort of very streamlined. So I was looking for something that did that sort of thing, and the Coronado is not. I was thinking Mustangs, I was thinking the SG bass, as they're kind of, favourites of mine anyway. And then I realised the Coronado's a short scale.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting. So I played that a bit more. I know I did the demo for it, but I actually hadn't picked it up since then. And that was the first time I played it. And I really like it. It's really heavy. I mean, it weighs a lot, which I kind of like. I like that sort of heavyweight bass feel. It's got a big sort of, I think it's an Alder centre block, actually.
Yes, they are. I remember from when you were doing the demo.
Yeah, and it weighs a bucket kind of for a short scale, but it just looks brilliant. Like the floating bridge with the Fender logo on it in like a wood block insert was really cool. Block inlays. The headstock is like a slightly more rounded version of the Precision or Jazz Bass headstock, which looks really cool. You've got those Fidelitron pickups in it, which we've seen on the Coronados and all of those sorts of things.
The like guitars, you mean?
Oh, sorry, it is a Coronado. I meant
Starcaster.
No. We've seen the Fidelitrons on the Cabronita. Sorry, that was what I meant to say. Which are really cool. Only this one kind of gave you more tonal controls, because of course you've got it set up like any other semi-hollow, where you've got independent volume controls and independent tone controls, as well as a three-way pickup selector, which just kind of gave you a few more options than you get on something like the
Cabronita.
What's wrong with your brain?
My brain is gone.
So
But
so you've got a three-way selector on that. So
Yes.
you can have both at the same time. Does that not?
I could have both pickups on, but the one with the tone rolled off, which is quite cool for. I mean, that's not something that's very commonly done. But I found, especially with the Fidelitron pickups, which are relatively thin, they're kind of like a thinner P bass pickup.
Right.
So it was kind of quite nice. I was sort of having like the neck pickup with the tone rolled off, and then the bridge pickup with the tone on full.
Are they? So they are just the Fidelitron pickups. They are
That's
the
right.
same pickups that are in the guitars.
That's
No, they're the same pickup that are in the
version.
Cabronita bass.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
of
what I
course.
mean. Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
my mistake. Yeah, of course,
But-
of course.
But yeah, but it's a totally like, I mean, it's a totally new. Well, it's not new, but it's a totally random thing to be in a bass. It's not a very common pickup to see, and this is just a really interesting way of putting it together. And it looks so good for the price that you're paying for it, for the sort of 680 odd quid that the Coronados cost. I think they're absolutely remarkable build quality, and just really cool instruments. So yes, that was my.
I'm going to see your Coronado cool and raise you some Vox Phantom Mark V cool.
All right, I can't beat a Phantom for cool. I don't think there is anything cooler.
So, Vox have reissued the Phantoms. Are you familiar with what these look like?
Teardrop.
No, that is the other one.
The teardrop.
The teardrop. It's just called the teardrop. So the Phantom.
But it's kind of teardrop-y. It's a more edged.
Yeah, they're kind of like a squared teardrop. Vox obviously did these a little while ago.
It's like a teardrop cut out by a kid, sort of thing.
Yeah, kind of. They've got a kind of weird, blocky sort of body. Vox have done these guitars, or they used to do them quite a while ago, and there's been various reissues since. This is the latest one. It's the Mark V Phantom. It's essentially a Strat. 3 single coils, tremolo bridge, the kind of feel that you'd expect, but just with this weird body shape, basswood body, and I just think it's a really cool alternative. Like, if you just want something that doesn't look like the guitar that your mate's got, it's the one to go for.
How much are they hitting the shelves at?
289 quid. They do a few different colours. Your best bet would really just be get to the site and check out the Vox
Any
Phantom.
cool colours?
So, hang on, let me have a look. So, the one I'm looking at is black. They've also got, I think this one is a salmon red.
Oh, that sounds perfect.
There's also a seafoam green.
Of course there is. Good. They've done them in proper colours.
I think a vintage white. Yes, vintage white.
Great.
The salmon.
So we're all covered here.
Yeah. Jay's got his favourite colour. You've got salmon red. I'll go for it. Any of them. They'll all do. But yeah, definitely check that out this week because it is very different. There's no other guitars that look like that. Vox, I guess, have kind of got a patent on the shape or copyright on the shape. And good on them for reissuing the Phantoms. Should we do some questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, a question. Just one question this week. I think I already know what the answer is going to be to this. This is David via email. He says, I want to replace the tuner and Electro-Harmonix Pulsar in my setup with some sort of multi-effects unit for the modulation/delay stuff that I don't use very often. What would you recommend between the M5 M9 by line 6 or the Zoom G3? Any advice would be awesome.
Probably the ME80 by Boss.
Well,
but he only wants...
I know. I was joking.
yeah, I mean,
So
while you were reading that out, I was thinking, ME.
But let's get the criteria straight. So he just wants modulation and a tuner.
I mean, if you just want modulation, it's difficult to look elsewhere other
Moore?
than... Well, if you want multi-effects...
And they do that. Yeah, they do that multi-modulation. pedal,
Yeah, that's
but
true.
no tuner built in.
No, I mean...
But it's so small that surely you could afford space for a tuner.
And they have just done a new tuner.
Boom.
Have they?
Yes, Moore have done a little
Moore have done
tuner. It kind of looks like
Like a Polytune Mini or something?
It looks like a Polytune,
Right,
essentially.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I find it difficult to look elsewhere other than the M5. Mainly because I know that
I
I'm
agree.
fighting Matt Knight's corner here, even though he's not here.
Hey, I've got an M5 on my board.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay,
In fact, it is now my tuner because I needed more space
Really?
and extra power, so I whipped out my...
So you've been inspired by Matt Knight's real estate concerns.
Well, talking about real estate concerns, I would say that there is another contender in this because the M5, although it's a small box, is still much bigger than your average
It's
compact
huge.
pedal.
And actually, I'll tell you what the biggest problem with it, on your average, I mean, I've got one of those, the things that everyone has, those stag pedal
Yeah,
boards.
UPC.
Yeah, those things. The M5 is so deep that actually I sacrifice a load of space above it as well because I
okay.
can't fit
Yeah.
a second pedal above it, so it's taking up a big quarter of my pedal board.
So, an alternative not mentioned in the email, Zoom MS70 CDR.
Yeah,
Chorus, delay, reverb.
yeah.
That's what it stands for. And it's got a tuner built in. And I just think it's the closest I've heard in terms of like the reverbs and like the weird sounds you can do with it. Closest I've heard to like Strymon stuff for around 100 quid. I honestly rave about that pedal. MS70 CDR.
Does Matt have one? Did he get one?
I don't know.
Don't think so. Me and him spent a bit of time with it. My only problem with the CDR was, I mean, obviously the first out of the CDR, out of the first thing that I went for was the Space Echo, obviously. The tap doesn't work with all of the delays.
Okay.
It works with some of them, but not all of them. And one of the ones it doesn't work with is the Space Echo, which I find a bit weird. In fairness, you can kind of understand it because, I mean, a Space Echo wouldn't have had a sort of tap delay. So, you sort of wind it in.
But the new one has.
but the new one has. But you know, so there are a couple of drawbacks, but in general, as you say, absolutely great pedal. Really, and we've said this before. Like, you know, the stuff that Zoom are coming out with at the moment is wicked,
Top notch.
really good. And like, I think that Roland and Boss will be sort of taking a step back and going, oh, okay, yeah, we need to up this.
So, if you're going to choose one, your final words of advice, what would you say to go for? So, you've got things like the Moore and a tuner, or you've got the Line 6 M5, or you've got the Zoom, either the G series or the MS70 CDR.
Yeah, I think.
What do you recommend we go for?
I think
Joe?
I'm taken by your Zoom idea. I mean, I have to say the Zoom, the B3, I have to speak about it from a bass perspective. The B3 that they introduced recently, I think, is absolutely remarkable. I know he only needs modulation, and I'm sure the guitar does the same thing, but the B3 gives you so much more variation than any of the Boss products, because I can set up a preamp of my choice. I mean, it has things like the Hartkey sort of 5500 amp preamp on there, and then I can have like a drive and a delay, or I could have, you know, anything and in any order, and I love that about the B and the G series.
I mean, don't forget that is available on like the ME80 plus loads more, but then that's a more expensive unit, and
absolutely,
you go up the range.
Absolutely,
So.
yeah. But
what,
you get that set preamp. I suppose in the ME80 on guitar stuff, I suppose you do get a choice of preamps. On bass stuff, you don't, and Zoom kind of have the monopoly on
So
that.
what are you saying? Are you saying that he should go for like one of the G3s, or should he go for that single, the MS70?
I have to, from a layman's perspective on guitar, I'm going to go for the G3, because if it's anything like the B3, then it's absolutely stunning for the money.
Jay?
I'd probably go M5.
You put me in a bad
It's probably because
position.
I have an M5. I'm sort of bored with it.
Grass is always greener.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's just my Octaver. I don't use anything else on it.
The Line 6 DL4 is always greener.
It is.
I'm going to say I don't think we're not going to settle this argument, because as much as I like the M5, it is a really, really big unit, and that part of that is because it's so well built. But I just don't think on a kind of small pedal board, if you're replacing those pedals, it just takes up a bit too much room for me, and I would probably go with the MS70 CDR, which is a cracking pedal.
Should we have an arm wrestle to set it?
No.
Okay.
Mud wrestle.
It constantly comes back. It constantly comes back to the quandary of real estate.
So yeah, I would actually say to answer your question, if you're not worried about space, get the M5, because I do think the sounds are a bit better, and it does a tiny bit more. If space is an issue, then the MS70 does sound incredible, but it does slightly less. It's a bit smaller.
But if space and money are less of an issue, ME80.
Boss ME80. But it also does, maybe you're crossing over with stuff that you've already got. So it's just a minefield.
Sell everything you've got and get an ME80.
It's a minefield.
A field of the mind.
Yes.
Oh, that is awesome.
I think we should wrap this up. Thanks for listening this week. If you've got
landmine brains.
I don't know what you're saying.
If you've got any questions, including why do we still have Joe Branton on this podcast, please send them over, podcast@gak.co.uk, or you can tweet them at GAK_co_UK, or get in touch on Facebook, facebook.com/GAK music. Or you can tweet at me directly at Mark_random, or you can tweet at Matt Knight, who would normally be on this podcast but isn't here, at Matt_Knightsy. That's Knight with SIE on the end.
Is that what it's in then?
I sent him a text the other day. He I can't remember what it was about, but he was sort of cussing me out over text, and I was like, yeah, all right, Matt Knightsy. That's Matt with SIE in the end. And I mean, actually,
Matt with SIE in there.
No. Well, actually, saying it out loud really isn't as funny as it was when I sort of texted it.
It sounds really funny. You should tell that story again from the start.
Should I?
Yeah.
No.
Maybe next week.
Tune in. How can people get in touch with you, Jay, and tell you that your stories are long-winded and boring?
Well, if you want to get in touch with me to tell me that my stories are not only long-winded, but also over the top, full of adjectives that don't need to be there.
On the side of the board.
No, I'm sorry. I'm JOIBN1, j.cross@gak.co.uk.
What? JOIBN1 on Twitter.
Yes.
Email j.cross@gak.co.uk.
You don't need to clarify these things. People who listen to the podcast are smart enough to infer what I'm talking about.
Joe Branton.
No one messages you anyway.
That's not true.
You can email me at joe.branton@gak.co.uk, or if you want to tweet me about cool old weird retro basses, because I'm feeling the retro bass at the moment. So you can tweet me at Yosef_900. That's Yosef with an _900 on the end.
Thanks so much for listening this week. Slightly more shambolic than normal. Do join us next week when hopefully Matt will be back and Jay and I can talk about our visit to Ibanez.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Turn the typing noise off. You're so clubby. You can just hear the thumping against the screen.
Clubber, clubber.
Clubber, clubber, clubber.
Everyone loves a clubber.
Clubber, clubber, clubber.